getting caught basically with his pants down and getting hit in the head with it. But at the same time, he was worrying about his health, and he was at the same time was wanting to tell the story at the same point. There is ways you can do it, and you do it well. I think even with the TLC that Edge, Christian, Matt, and Jeff, and the Dudley Boys pulled off showed you can use weapons and use it to tell a good story. But at the same time, like you said, Attitude Era would not be able to exist currently, not in any way, shape, and form. And you referenced kids with the bra and panties match. WWE is the Disney of wrestling. Their whole idea of it is to get you when you're young. And you got that in a couple different areas. You got that with Disney. You got that with Nintendo with video games. You got that with WWE with wrestling. That's why they did all these crossovers with Hanna-Barbera and whatnot.
You look at... sorry.
And they wouldn't have been able to do that if they had a Stone Cold Steve Austin telling Vince McMahon that he's an asshole and pointing the middle finger and whatnot. It wouldn't have worked.
And back then in the Attitude Era, they weren't trying to necessarily attract the young kid or going for the more of the teenage to the older adults.
Right.
That was their audience. Now the opposite side, you had WCW. Now there you can watch it as a kid. There's nothing filthy about it. There's nothing like you could look at it like, oh, I can't watch my kid watch it. So yeah, you could. Yeah, there's nothing on that on their television on their product that a kid couldn't watch. That's why I had a hard time watching the Attitude Era. So did you. I mean, you had a hard time. Back in the day.
Timing.
Huh?
The timing. Like back then when I was trying to watch Attitude Era, my mom was not behind it. They was like, "Oh yeah, you can watch WCW because, they didn't cuss or anything like that." And the most sexualized thing that they had was, well, before Russo came, I should clarify, the most sexualized thing that they had was the Nitro Girls. And I remember I was trying to convince my mom to let me watch WWF, and I flipped to it, and oh look, it's a mud wrestling match. Yeah, you're not watching this.
Every time that was hilarious. But going back on the softness, I believe there's parts of the product that are soft. And I don't mean saying that these guys and girls are not tough. I'm not saying that whatsoever. It's for one, it's the scripts. I should say, I'm not saying scripts of the promos, yes, but it's the product itself. But yeah, there's definitely storylines where this is not good. There's definitely things in the product where they could do better.
Right.
And there's some of the characters are not doing, some of them are just not being very great. And showing a certain side of them that they could show better. And I guess you want to say it's soft. There's things that are what you would call soft as far as it more or less, let's say, some is candy coated. That's the best way to say it. It's just they're advertisers and their sponsors and people they team up with. Just like you said, they can't do that as much as they can't be as bloody and crazy as they once were. Even go back to the ruthless aggression era. There's things that they did back then that they really shouldn't be doing this today because of their sponsors, because of these people who they work with. I mean, it don't bother me going back to at least the ruthless aggression era, but plus you didn't have you didn't have the characters that you have now that you did back then. You can't do it. You can't sit there and think you're going to reenact something off of different people. You can't do it. You have to move on. Different characters, different people, different products. You have to move on. Just like I just said, you can't do Attitude Era in 2021. Ain't gonna happen. You don't have those people. You can't. It's not just the seeing Goldust in a lingerie or whatever. That was weird. It's just more or less you can't. It's just different wrestlers, different styles, and it's why you're looking at one point now. And that's more the televised part of the so-called softness that I'm speaking of. That it's just a different generation, and WWE has a different product, and they want different type of sponsors and companies that they get to team up with. Now, if you turn on AEW now, you're not going to see the same exact product difference. That's who they want to attract. You're going to see a little more edginess. You're going to see a little more of this, a little more of that. That's why that's as close as you can get with AEW.
Well, right, and like with WWE, the problems with the product itself are not inherently linked to being PG. Other companies were able to be PG, like we've referenced a couple times. WCW, for the most part, was considered PG. They watched their language, and a lot of stuff wasn't allowed. And I think that's more or less because it was Turner's product, and he wanted to control what was shown on TNT and TBS a little bit more than that. But it's not inherently wrong, hard, or the reason that the product is suffering. Yeah, it's a little bit harder. There's a little bit limit. You have limitations you have to work within, but it doesn't necessarily mean you can't be successful and pull it off. I think inherently the problem is WWE. We've talked about this before. They're not very good at constantly making good new stars, and Vince McMahon has not been. Vince McMahon has not been good at that since the 90s. I mean, he has a lot of talent in his hands between Raw and SmackDown. Some of the guys that you and I mentioned, like Dolph Ziggler, Kevin Owens, Shinsuke Nakamura, AJ Styles, Cesaro. I'm not a big fan of Sheamus, but I can give him credit. He is talented.
Actually, in my view, it wasn't the 90s. It was the Ruthless Aggression era. That was the last era. They had such a great lineup of people. Wasn't even funny.
I guess so. I guess, yeah, you could say that. Yeah, because he did make stars out of Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, and all that.
Booker T became even a bigger star. JBL started coming out as bigger stars. Cena came around. Bautista, Shelton Benjamin. He had it was Lesnar. Randy Orton. There's so many stars from the late 90s that were so young that they still carried on so much the Ruthless Aggression there. And of course, you had newer stars that were just starting out as far as on the big screen there that just came from OVW. And, you had so many different flavors. Characters were phenomenal. Yeah, you don't have, like you just said, now. There's not as much in depth. You don't have the in-depthness. Part of that is also, like you said, character development. That's one of their weaknesses that's been going on for a while now, and it's affecting the product too. And that's something they got to change. But I know that the product itself, as far as being the whole softness as being spoken of, gotta look at what you have to work with too. So like I said, sponsors and so forth and network, but what characters are you dealing with too?
Well, that's the thing, and like they need it, especially in this day and age with the pandemic going on. They're not selling out house shows, which I know that was a big revenue stream for WWE. It was house shows. They're not making money on house shows, so they have to rely heavily on sponsors and TV deals. And I realistically believe that they wouldn't have been able to strike the deals with Fox and NBC for the Peacock network if they didn't do it. If they didn't make it such family friendly that they're able to basically put on that they can have ads with Snickers, M&Ms. I don't know if this is still nowadays because I fast forward through so many commercials, but like Play-Doh and all these toy companies and stuff, they wouldn't have been able to do that had they kept the path that they're going with the TV-14 or I think the highest they got was TV-14. With that rating, they had to be PG. They had to be introduced as kid friendly and whatnot.
Well, with Snickers, good. I'm sorry.
They wouldn't have been able to survive, especially in a pandemic right now, without it.
Well, with Snickers, they've been around with them for quite a while. I think it's more or less what Snickers wants as well. But obviously, there's money involved. So how much money, each one's going to have. But it depends on what Snickers. If Snickers says, "Hey, your product's not what we're looking for," or just it depends on where Snickers wants to evolve to as well.
Right.
So that's, Snickers has been around with WWE for quite a long time. Different shows. Been a while, but it's just it's like once again, it depends on what Snickers wants too. Just because had them 10 years ago. Like, well, 5 years later, they may not want to represent because we don't like your product. We don't like what it represents. So it's like you're saying. So it's just, if Snickers says, hey, we want this is, we don't like the way your product's going, whether it's too weak, too soft, aka, or it's too violent. They're going to not, back away, but it also has a lot of money on the table too. So.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what WWE has to do. They have stockholders that they have to answer to, and even if it's a situation where WWE creatively wants to move more into the TV14, now they're possibly affecting their ad revenue. They're affecting their toy sales. They're affecting a lot of things, even with ratings and things of that nature. Now they have to explain to investors why they made such a big change like that and eliminated all this money being pumped back into the company. That's a return on investment to the stockholders. It's a straight up business with it, and WWE is one of the biggest players, just like Disney is one of the biggest players in movies. And they have to maintain this kid friendly thing. And if WWE if their storylines aren't engaging, it's not because of the PG era. It's because their writers are doing a terrible job.
Yeah, they need to do some adjustments to the writing going on with the product because they're writing it. They need to stop doing as much on the script promos. You can't script every person because I think there's people that can do a promo on their own. It's becoming to where it's just too over scripted, and it's just there's matches just are not. Of course, you already heard an excuse of there's no audience. Well, even before they had no audience, without the whole Thunderdome gimmick, with the setup, whatever you want to call it. Now, without that, it was still had its issues. When you have writers that are inside your company, they're strictly, they don't come from a wrestling background. They may not even know much about wrestling. You gotta. I mean, I understand there's still a skill there to coach. I understand that, but if you don't have that, it's like you don't know what your product is completely. So it's another issue there. And like I said before, character development is a huge thing. So if you're close to WrestleMania season, it's really any show period during the whole entire year. You don't have that in-depth roster, you got some problems, and it's just where you got to make sure that people are obviously subscribing to the network and watching the TV shows, on USA or Fox, and that's a problem. And obviously, you said they're watching the sensitivity, so to speak, on the shows with the product. The only thing they did recently that they've been doing that's not so-called really kid friendly is really not. I say twice. One recently was the Fiend. Well, kind of recently, the Fiend getting burnt. Even though it wasn't him, it was a mannequin. They had to set the Fiend on fire. Randy Orton did. That was one. And also, two with Randy Orton kind of lighting Alexa Bliss on fire, would never really happen. Attempting to, I'll say that. 3 was when Rey Mysterio got his eye poked out. That's the top 3 that's in my mind, top of my head. Maybe I'm sure there's more, but yeah, there's things that was a little risky for their product, obviously. I was surprised that they actually did that, honestly. But
you can kind of tell they're moving a little bit more further up the rating, a little bit away from PG and leaning closer to TV14, but still maintaining PG. But yeah, it's becoming a little bit more on the risky level.
Yeah. So it's with Undertaker saying soft. I can, there's something also some have said have from the back in the day of walking the locker room and seeing the environment with the so-called guys in the back. They're doing things that they didn't do back in the day, which I can understand their point of view. Okay, this has definitely changed. What the hell's going on? And of course, but of course, they had a different environment back then. So now these days, they do something more different. So it's more of a generation shock, basically. It's you're not, what the hell's going on, these guys and girls. I'm not